Check. Sounds good.
Affordability is the priority for the president. And
Everything looks like it's working. Still have not figured out the audio issue of why I hear an echo in my headphones, but I think it has to do with the YOLO box and receiving something from a signal from the computer, and then the two just don't communicate well if you're trying to run videos from the computer. But so I don't keep my headphones on; I keep them up. So I hope that's not weird. But how's everybody doing? Starting the live stream for Fight Like Heaven, and there was some interesting news that came out, and it has to do with the food pyramid, which of all things, I never thought that I would even think about ever again. But there is now a new food pyramid. I think I can pull up an image of it. This is the new food pyramid, and the title of this episode is called "The Food Pyramid is a Lie." And it's not going to be what you think. I mean, is this true or not true? This is true. This is how healthy people eat. They're eating the stuff at the top. They're going to enjoy the meats and dairies, first being red meat, chicken, then vegetables, whole milk, fish, egg, yogurt, everything kind of on the left side. Some people are I do see a lot of like high-end like calisthenics guys that just eat fruit. I think it's mainly in New York, but I don't even know what that's called, but they just eat fruit. But then at the bottom you have breads and grains, right? And bread in America gets you fat, bread in Europe gets you healthy, and that's a big difference between our two countries. And that's what I'm going to get into today, and why I say that this actually doesn't matter the way that people think it does. This matters in terms of let's get some more information and change up something that was bad in the past. Because I think, yeah, at the top of the pyramid, it's foods and drinks high in fat and sugar and salts, fats, spreads, and oils, and down a little bit, meat, poultry, fish, and eggs, then milk, yogurt, cheese, wholemeal cereal, breads, potatoes, pasta, and rice, and then at the bottom, vegetables, salads, and fruits. So, and now I guess it's like this, but it doesn't give you sort of ratios the way the old pyramid did. But that's where we're at today with the food pyramid, and it's interesting because if you've ever traveled outside of the United States, you've ever gone to other countries, you will notice immediately that their food is very nice. And you can't really put your finger on it, especially traveling around South America, South and Central America, not so much in Mexico. I mean, in Mexico, they have uh, these little tags on it, on everything. Calories, Mexico, food label. And you'll see, I mean, you'll go into a grocery store, and I am not kidding you. Every single thing on the shelf will have these warnings. Now imagine you go to the store, exceso calorías, exceso azúcar, exceso grasas saturadas, exceso sodio. And I mean, I went to the Oxxo in Mexico, and you cannot find a single thing in the entire store that doesn't have 1 to 4 of these labels. Imagine that all the food you buy is labeled with this. Now think about what we have in our grocery stores. You go to the grocery store, how much of it is processed and crappy food? I mean, U.S. grocery aisle. Yeah, I can't. I'm not even gonna pull up an image on it, but you go to the grocery store, you know what it looks like. But there's so much crap food. There's so much processed food. But I mean, it's a good thing that that there is a prioritization in terms of, I don't know if it's the USDA. I think it's the USDA. I don't think it's the FDA, but the FDA is the one who can ban certain things that we're going to talk about in this show today. But the USDA is the one that's, I guess, responsible for these guidelines here. So you got the old pyramid, where the base of the pyramid, which should be what you eat most of, is bread and pastas and stuff like that, which in Italy and other countries, that's definitely the base. And then, fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy, and then at the top, sugar. So I don't know why they're putting the pyramid upside down now. Upside pyramid, downside pyramid, above and below pyramid. So I don't even know why this is necessary unless we're going to talk about the sort of issues with food in America in the first place. And food in America is a absolute problem. If you look to I don't know if it's as of recently as today, but if you look at the most obese countries in the world, the U.S. is the 12th most obese country in the world. And that's because we have incredible sums of junk food, additives, preservatives. A lot of people, there's this concept that, you guys need to eat right, or pointing the finger at the consumer. But in reality, it's not so much the consumer's fault what choices they have to eat. So, we're going to look at
Ever since we were kids, we were told to rely on the food pyramid to tell us how much of each food group we were supposed to eat in order to lead healthy lives. But as it turns out, there wasn't really a whole lot of science backing that up. Instead, there was a whole lot of dough, and not the tossing kind. Today on Weird History 1800s, Wilbur Olin Atwater was a revolutionary nutritionist. He earned his PhD in agricultural chemistry from Yale University, and his thesis on maize was the first ever modern chemical analysis of a food to be performed in the United States. It was pretty amazing. From there, he landed himself a job teaching chemistry at Wesleyan University, where he conducted landmark experiments on agriculture and, eventually, nutrition. It wasn't long before the U.S. government, like ice cream, scooped him up, and by the late 1870s, Atwater was conducting experiments on the nutritive value of fish and other invertebrates for the U.S. Fish Commission, along with studies on meat consumption for the Smithsonian Institution. He was considered the nation's leading nutritionist, and the United States Department of Agriculture even allowed him to speak on their behalf in an 1894 publication of Farmer's Bulletin. It was the talk of 1894. Therein, Atwater wrote, "The evils of overeating may not be felt at once, but sooner or later they are sure to appear, perhaps in an excessive amount of fatty tissue, perhaps in general debility, perhaps in actual disease." Judging by his feelings about the evils of overeating, it's a good thing Atwater didn't live to see the invention of pizza delivery. The publication marked a turning point for the USDA. After being founded in 1862, the USDA had previously abstained from doling out nutritional advice. But like any nagging Nancy can tell you, once you start giving out advice, it can be hard to know when to stop. Just 2 years later, Atwater would go on to publish his magnum opus, The Chemical Composition of American Food Materials. Everyone remembers where they were the day that book dropped. This nutritional guide documented the fuel value, or caloric content, of everyday foods, along with their fat, carb, and protein contents. However, scientists at the time didn't have a good grasp on exactly how vitamins and minerals affected the body, and so they were left out of Atwater's guide altogether. Regardless, Atwater's guide would act as the primary handbook for the USDA's recommendations for decades to come. In other words, a single man was dictating the government's position on nutrition. That is, until the food rationing of World War II. In 1943, the USDA created the first predecessor to the food pyramid. It was pretty basic. In fact, it was called the Basic Seven. Divided into 7 different categories, this chart attempted to steer people away from malnutrition during wartime food shortages. It consisted of equal parts: 1. Green and yellow vegetables, 2. Oranges, tomatoes, and grapefruit, 3. Potatoes and other vegetables and fruits, 4. Milk and milk products, 5. Meat, poultry, fish, or eggs, 6. Bread, flour, and cereals, and 7. Butter and fortified margarine. That's the most powerful margarine. In addition, they also included a disclaimer that invited citizens to eat any other foods you want, which seems like it negates the entire purpose of the wheel. Guess you could fling it around with your friends or something. At the time, nutritionists criticized the wheel for giving each category equal space on the wheel, making it look like 1/7 of a person's diet should be entirely butter. Wait, it's not supposed to be? Still, varieties of fresh produce appeared in 3 of the basic 7 groups, and noticeably, bread, flour, and cereals only appeared in 1. 13 years later, the USDA would update their guidelines for the post-war era. Still trying to fight off malnutrition, they came up with...
We're going to skip ahead to the pyramid.
By the 1990s, the anti-fat pro-carbs movement was firmly cemented in the American conscience. Even organizations like the American Heart Association hopped aboard the misinformation train. They advocated for limiting fat-based caloric intake to 30% of one's daily diet, while increasing the number of calories individuals got from carbs to make up for it. According to Scientific American, however, this 30% figure, which became standard nutritional guidance for well over a decade to come, was based on no long-term studies and was instead built off of several Surgeon General, National Research Council, and Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee reports. Likewise, studies of the early 1990s showed that replacing calories from saturated fats with calories from carbohydrates did nothing to reduce the risk of heart disease. And replacing calories from unsaturated fats proved to be an even worse catastrophe. Cutting out unsaturated fats and replacing them with carbs both increased the risk of heart disease and increased rates of obesity. However, none of this stopped the government from moving full steam ahead with even more recommendations. And in 1992, the USDA unveiled their first ever food guideline pyramid. At the pyramid's pinnacle, with a disclaimer of use sparingly, were fats, oils, and sweets, all lumped together in one dismal peak. Below that were equal small portions of dairies and proteins, slightly larger portions of vegetables and fruits, and a gigantic base of bread. Just tons and tons of bread. According to this pyramid, you should try to harvest half a wheat field with your teeth each day. The government then distributed this pyramid via posters and textbooks that went into schools the nation over, and they began to inculcate the children of the 90s and the aughts with their bready vision for the world. With this increased governmental guidance, obesity levels continued to rise, almost doubling from their 1980 levels by the new millennium. Enter the food lobby. Angered by their small share of the 1992 food pyramid, the Dairy Council stepped up their pressure on government bureaucrats to increase their recommended dairy consumption. Likewise, as people cried foul over the lack of differentiation between good fats and bad fats, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association fought hard against them to keep red meats in the same meaty catch-all as chicken and fish. For their part, Atkins Nutritionals Inc., hell-bent on reducing America's carbohydrate intake, began to pour money into campaigns that would reduce the USDA's future CARB guidelines. Against them, though, were the American Millers Association, who wanted to keep starchy potatoes in with the rest of the vegetable category. In 2005, with all of this outside pressure and with money being thrown in every direction, the USDA tried again. They created the all-new My Pyramid Food Guidance System, an aesthetically vague rendition of their 1992 pyramid, but one that included a little guy walking up the side to encourage people to exercise. This new pyramid, while still pushing people to gorge themselves on bread, encouraged the consumption of whole grains instead of processed grains. What's more, it pushed dairy to a whopping 23% share of the new dietary guidelines, doubling what they'd recommended just 13 years prior, and raising questions.
So you can see from that big money has more to do with trying to convince people what to eat than convincing people that what you should eat is actually healthy. They're just trying to sell their stuff, right? So it's just kind of interesting that a lot of these things in our country are based on one person's research and one person's direction. And I know if we did more research on this, and if that's something you guys want to see, let me know in the comments, and I can definitely do more research on topics that you're interested in. But when it comes to this idea of the food pyramid, it's based on something that we're going to talk on later. It's based on the fact of, well, it's not so much what you're eating, it's the fact of what's in what you're eating versus what's actually available out there in the world versus what we have. And so we're going to actually listen to the press conference that was held, and I have it right here. Yeah, let's just watch that for a minute.
John, let me just add something to that. Brooke and I are working on a program. Affordability is the priority for the president. And we know we have to make it easy and accessible for healthy foods for every American. And we believe we can do that. We think affordable food is within reach of every American family. We are working on a education and information program that will allow American families all over the country to come onto our website and find the healthiest foods at the lowest cost for themselves. I'd also just add this. The idea that a cheap meal made of processed food is cheap is an illusion, because you're paying for it on the back end. You're paying for it with diabetes, with obesity, with illness. And if you internalize that cost of the meal, it would be a tiny fraction of the long-term cost of eating bad food.
So we'll take one more in the white blazer. Thank you, Caroline. Secretary of Kennedy, you mentioned healthy fats, but also ending the war.
The schedule, there's nothing compulsory in it. Everybody, I've always promised, I'm not going to take people's vaccines away from them. People who want to get vaccines, everybody who wants them can get all of the vaccines that were on the old schedule. They will all be paid for by the America Healthy Again. For decades, Americans have grown sicker while healthcare costs have soared. The reason is clear. The hard truth is that our government has been lying to us to protect corporate profit-taking, telling us that these food-like substances were beneficial to public health. Federal policy promoted and subsidized highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates and turned a blind eye to the disastrous consequences. Today, the lies stop. The new guidelines recognize that whole, nutrient-dense food is the most effective path to better health and lower healthcare costs. Protein and healthy fats are essential and were wrongly discouraged in prior dietary guidelines. We are ending the war on saturated fats. Diets rich in vegetables and fruits reduce disease risk more effectively than many drugs. Whole grains outperform refined carbohydrates. Added sugars, especially sugar-sweetened beverages, drive metabolic disease, and today our government declares war on added sugar. Highly processed foods loaded with additives, added sugar, and excess salt damage health and should be avoided. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, my message is clear: eat real food. Nothing matters more for healthcare outcomes, economic productivity, military readiness, and fiscal stability. The dietary guidelines shape dozens of federal feeding programs, including Head Start. These standards affect 45 million school lunches every day, meals for 1.3 million active duty service members, and food served to 9 million veterans in VA hospitals. Today begins the work of aligning those programs with affordable, whole, nutrient-dense food. Implementation requires coordination across the government. I'm working with many of my fellow cabinet secretaries to deliver results. I want to thank Bobby Mukamala, thank you very much, who is the president of the American Medical Association, for committing to mobilize the medical community on nutrition. And I thank also the American Academy of Pediatrics for partnering on this effort. I also look forward to working with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Dr. Marty Makary to fund and prioritize rigorous nutrition research at the NIH and at the FDA. The stakes are measurable and severe. A Johns Hopkins analysis estimates that 48% of every federal taxpayer dollar now goes to healthcare. The CDC reports that 90% of healthcare spending treats chronic disease. That means that 40%, 40 cents of every dollar that taxpayers pay in this country is going to treat diseases that could be averted through good food. The United States has the highest obesity and type 2 diabetes rate in the developed world. We spend 3 times more per capita than the European Union on health care, yet our life expectancy is 5 years lower. largely due to diet-related chronic disease. Our childhood obesity rate is 5 times higher than countries like France. 1/3 of U.S. teens have prediabetes, over 35% are overweight or obese, and 20% of young adults have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. 77% of military-aged Americans are ineligible for military service because of diet-related conditions. If a foreign adversary sought to destroy the health of our children, to cripple our economy, to weaken our national security, there would be no better strategy than to addict us to ultra-processed foods. It's shocking that our own government helped to drive these cataclysmic changes in our diet. The damage is real, it is preventable, and President Trump has ordered it to end. If the United States reduced obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and Alzheimer's to Japanese levels, we would save approximately $600 billion a year. About 50% of Medicare.
We would save $600 billion a year. Yeah, but that means you wouldn't be spending $600 a year to the people that you're saving this money from. They don't want that money saved. They want that money spent. That money spent means it goes into their pockets. And so sickness and disease is a very profitable institution. So why would we want to end that, right? So, but here we go. You know, the administration is trying to open up some paths of knowledge. But at the end of the day, you're trying to convince some people to eat well. But the question is, what is in the food that you're eating well? I mean, this is a whole topic, and I have all night in terms of being able to go through everything that's possible. But the amount of crap that is in your food, it doesn't matter if you're eating healthy. And I'm going to show you some stuff that's in your food that you don't want to see. I'm telling you. Thank God thousands of people aren't on here, because they're about to see some stuff in their food that just is absolutely horrific. And so I've got a list here that I've made, and it's additives and what their function are, and sort of the classification of why these things are sort of banned in the Europe and other countries. So here, the first thing on the list is potassium bromate. And you'll see potassium bromate in literally everything. And potassium bromate is just, classified as possible human carcinogen linked to kidney and thyroid tumors in animal studies. What is that? Cancer, right? It's a dough strengthener, flour improver, and baked goods. Allowed in limited amounts, found in some breads, pizzas, baked goods, and from brands like A&M, Bronx Baking, or no, that's not true. Whatever this is saying right here, this ain't the facts. You will find potassium bromate in so many things. If you literally look at the back of your ingredients, if you've ever done that, maybe I'm gonna go out. If some people let me know if you want me to take pictures of ingredients in food and then post it, because these sort of things are so prevalent. Azodicarbonamide. It's a bleaching agent in dough. So it breaks down into semi-carbazide, which may increase cancer risks, also linked to respiratory issues. You'll find it in bread, tortillas, bakery products. Butylated, and there's something all of these have in common. Obviously, you're already starting to see it. Butylated hydroxyanazole, preservative to prevent rancidity in fats and oils. Reasonably anticipated human carcinogen per U.S. National Institute of Health. Potential endocrine disruptor, right? Butylated hydroxytoluene, preserves similar to BHA, used in fats, cereals, and packaging, linked to liver and kidney damage in animals, restricted due to potential health risks. Propylparaben, preservative in baked goods, dairies, and beverages. wow, why would you need it in dairy, right? Potential fertility disruptor and endocrine effects, hormone mimicking properties. That sounds horrible. Titanium dioxide, a colorant to whiten or brighten foods like candies, gums, and baked goods. Potential to cause DNA or chromosomal damage, genotoxicity concerns from studies. Genotoxicity. This is in your food, man. Artificial colors, which we know that the administration is banning synthetic dyes, which is used for candy, cereals, and beverages, linked to hyperactivity in children, potential cancer risk. You know what I mean? Next one, all it says is requires a label in EU. I'm not skipping stuff. It's just not relevant. Now, this one is a sensitive topic, but don't go after the yum yum, but I'm going after the yum yum. It's monosodium glutamate, the secret ingredient, right? It's a flavor enhancer for savory tastes, and my goodness, it makes it savory. Linked to headaches, nausea, potential neurotoxicity, and obesity in some studies. So that's banned in many countries. Then we got the massive culprit in America, which is high fructose corn syrup, which is a cheaper than sugar sweetener. And this is in freaking everywhere. So you see this food pyramid, right? And we'll get into some, well, the cheese is coming from pasteurized milk. The chicken, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes, liver disease, and metabolic syndrome due to rapid fructose absorption. And that is literally in everything. Sodium nitrite, preservative and color fixer in cured meats, forms nitrosamines, potential carcinogen linked to increased cancer risk, and this sounds horrible, methemoglobinemia. Anemia. So anemia is something with blood, but methemoglobinemia in children, right? Sounds bad. So why do we have sodium nitrate allowed? See, all of these things need to be banned in America as they are banned in other countries. Carrageenan. It's a thicker and stabilizer made from seaweed. It's made from seaweed. It can't be that bad. May cause digestive issues, inflammation, gut ulcers, some form linked to cancer in animal studies. Aspartame. Artificial sweetener. Debated links to cancers, headaches, and neurological issues. Contains phenylamines. Risk for those with PKU, not sure what that means, but it's used in diet sodas and sugar-free gums and tons of stuff. This you'll find everywhere. Sodium benzoate. It's preserved to inhibit mold. When combined with vitamin C, forms benzene, which is a carcinogen, and potential hyperactivity in children. This stuff is all up in our food. It's in the meats, it's in the dairies, it's in the cheeses, the vegetables. I mean, we'll get into that, but I want to jump ahead. Bisphenol A. I'm skipping red dyes because, we already know. Chemical in can linings and plastics, which migrates into so that's BPA. And there's a lot of BPA banning going on because everybody has come to the conclusion that maybe we shouldn't feed people BPA. Endocrine distributor mimicking estrogen, linked to fertility issues, obesity, and development problems in children. Yeah, maybe that should be nowhere near our food at all, and anybody who puts it near our food or on our food or around our food should be sent to jail. Phthalates. Plasticized that leaches into food, hormone disruptor, reproductive issues, and increased obesity and cardiovascular risk. So that's in processed cheeses, fast food packaging, and fatty foods like meats. So I don't know what kind of meats they're in, but hydrogenated oils, trans fats, which is a stabilizer for shelf life and texture, which raises, I guess, bad cholesterol, heart disease, largely banned in the U.S. since 2018, but traces remain in some products. like margarine shortenings and fried foods, which people should stay away from. Here is a video.
We want to turn now to a series of stories that we are doing this week.
It's food products that are banned in Europe and why. So if it's banned in Europe, why do we then sell it to Americans? That's a good question.
On how U.S. food regulations have left American consumers exposed to chemicals and additives that have been banned in other countries. CBS's Holly Williams goes in depth to show us how some of these ingredients may be linked to cancer and other health-related issues.
From baguettes to focaccia, Europe is famous for its bread, but one ingredient is missing. Potassium bromate is a suspected carcinogen that's banned for human consumption in Europe as well as China and India, but legal in the US, where it's used by some food makers to strengthen dough and estimated to be present in over 100 products.
There is evidence that it may be toxic to human consumers, that it may even either initiate or promote the development of tumours.
Professor Eric Millstone is an expert on food additives and told us European countries take a much more cautious approach to food safety.
Can we say for sure that these differences in regulations mean that people in the US have developed cancers that they would not have developed if they'd been eating only in Europe?
I think that is almost certainly the conclusion that we could reach.
It's not just potassium bromate, but
Really?
many other chemicals and substances that are banned here in Europe over health concerns, but considered safe by the FDA.
Do you think most Americans are aware that they're being exposed to substances that are viewed as dangerous over here?
They probably just think, well, if it's available and it's in the store, then it's probably fine.
Stacey McNamara is from upstate New York, but has been living in London for 10 years. She told us raising children on this side of the Atlantic has opened her eyes to what's allowed in food in the US. She has no plans to ever move back home.
And is food safety a part of that decision?
For sure, yeah. How am I going to protect my children when it's just everywhere?
In a statement to
Real
CBS
talk.
News, the FDA said that when used properly, potassium bromate converts to a harmless substance during food production. But at the same time, Nora, it acknowledged that not all potassium bromate may convert, saying control measures can minimize the amount in food.
You gotta understand, there's billions of dollars behind this. They don't want to tell you the facts. They don't want to tell you the truth. They don't want to tell you how dangerous this stuff is, how it's all linked to cancer, how it's all banned in other countries. These people are not ethical. Business people are not ethical at all. They do not have a moral basis by which to judge. And they have to, the only way that they can operate well for the betterment of mankind is literally a boot on their neck. And it's really sad to see that they would have this much garbage in our food. I mean, I was going around the grocery store today just looking at ingredients, and there are words that cannot be said in the English language, and that stuff is in our food. So what good is a food pyramid? Hey, let's look at A-Peel. You got fruits and vegetables. Bill Gates's A-Peel. An edible coating to extend the life of fruits and vegetables. Really? Is that what we need? An edible coating? And then, of course, you see the fact checkers. And the fact checkers, of course, they say it's good for you. You know what's good for me? Just an apple off a tree with nothing. And then
Welcome in, peeps. It's Dr. Living Good. Good week to you. It's going to be a good one.
2 years ago. This guy needs some lighting.
It's going to be a great week, getting lots done, and you're making progress. You might
What is this stuff?
often don't get overly excited about too many things, or try to bring you a perspective of
He needs
clarity
audio.
when things get too far right or too far left. But the new one right now is Apeel, A-P-E-E-L, Apeel, and it is a food coating, right, that is going on foods to help them not oxidize and break down too fast. So behind me, like I have a couple bananas, and you're seeing the oxidation process just begin. That's the brown part where it begins to break down. and it goes from more of a green probiotic food to more nutrient dense to changing to decomposing and going back into the earth. And there's 40 to 50% of produce that ends up getting wasted in the world because it doesn't get eaten in time. We overproduce oftentimes. So we'll use things like this plastic in order to try to seal a thing like a cucumber to last longer. But then we end up putting a lot of plastic into the world. So a company that's been around since 2012 created a chemical that they put on foods that is not a wax that you might find like on an apple to try to prevent that, but can go on all kinds of foods like an avocado or an orange or all kinds of things. And it's creating quite an uproar. Anytime Bill Gates gets involved nowadays, very controversial, debatable, problematic sometimes figure. And so people have really strong opinions against that. But him, Oprah, Katy Perry have all invested in a large company called Apeel. And so I did some research and did some digging on this. Is this something we should be concerned about? Is there some facts to what's going on here? And, kind of what is it? So here we go. I'm going to dive into this thing and wanted to, out of the gates, show you this. So let's go to this split screen here. So this is the Apeel's website, right? And it says, how do we know it's safe to eat? What is it? It's a plant-based derived mono and diglyceride lipid, which are found in seeds, peels, and pulps of plants that we already eat. Mono. These ingredients are also found in human breast milk. They're formed in the human body during the natural digestion of fats and oils. Apeel uses these plant lipids because they have a long history of safe consumption, 50 years. Okay, so they're, assuring us there's not trans fat in there, it's non-GMO that these are coming from. The big concern that a lot of people are having, is there heavy metals in there, is we're ingesting mono and diglyceride. What are those? Why is that a concern? And is this actually a harmful thing for you to be put into your body? Well, a lot of the controversy came from, I'm going to answer that question in just a moment, came from this little sheet right here, right? Let me show you this one. This is a data safety sheet for Apeel, right at the top. See this? But it's under the professional hygiene identifier. So I got this sent to me, and I was like, oh, okay, but why does it say personal hygiene? And it said neural hard surfactant cleaner, and then I kept going. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to decipher some of these. I'm used to looking at stuff like this to vet, maybe a supplement or an ingredient. And it had all these dangers of causing eye damage, and you need to wear protective clothing. And if you ingested it, it creates problems, and you needed medical attention. And I started getting concerned. And then I saw it contains alcohol and terpenes, and I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know if this is actually what they're referring to. Turns out this is actually a spray. It's a cleaner named Apeel, and it just happened to have the same name. So if you see this report, okay, shut that one down because that one's actually not true, right? So we don't actually a spray. I started getting concerned, and neural hard surfactant cleaner, and then I kept going, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to decipher some of these. I'm used to looking at stuff like this to vet, maybe a supplement or an ingredient, and it had all these dangers of causing eye damage, and you need to wear protective clothing, and if you ingested it, it creates problems, and you needed medical attention. And I started getting concerned, and then I saw it contains alcohol and terpenes, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know if this is actually what they're referring to. Turns out this is actually a spray. It's a cleaner named Apeel, and it just happened to have the same name. So if you see this report, okay, shut that one down because that one's actually not true, right? So we don't want to be spreading misinformation when we're talking about these things, and we want to be accurate, right? So that was actually a surfactant cleaner, which of course would be dangerous if you inhaled it or ate it, and it does have alcohol in it. This spray-on, dippable, or rub-on Apeel oxidative cover doesn't have that type of warning. However, it is created out of those mono and diglycerides. This right here is what we want to pay attention to. So what are those? All right, it's a simple Google search, right? I'll save you the time. Natural sources of fatty acids. So they're correct. They said these are found in breast milk. And all right, they naturally do occur, and they're a part of plant oils. So this got my attention. Whenever you start messing with plant oils, if you know Dr. Livingood, these can be very dangerous little buggers, or they can be beneficial depending what type of plant they come from. So what types do they come from? Well, I Googled exactly that. Soybean, okay, that's a problem. Unless they're using non-GMO soybeans, the Apeel is probably not from that. We don't know what it's from. It doesn't say. That's part of the problem. Bill Gates is behind it, and we don't know exactly what's in it. They're being tight-lipped about that. So then it's like, there are some things in the world that it's a little bit harder, like perfume, exactly what, the 72 things it's made out of or how they make it. Like, I get that. But with this, when it's going and being dipped on our food, you kind of want to dig a little deeper. But it says non-GMO, so I'm going to assume it's not soybean, but could be grapeseed. I don't have a problem with grapeseed, right? Canola, I have a major problem with. That's made from a rape seed, not a grape seed, and it is linoleic acid. It is a
Well, we can see in the APL patent that it says when water is used as the solvent, for example, the cutin-derived monomers and oligomers, esters, and combinations thereof typically may be insolvent at room temperature, which, I mean, your body is at room temperature most times. I mean, not like literally. It's like more than that, but not hot enough to melt stuff. But may or may not be soluble at the elevated temperatures and pressures depending on the specific plant from which the cutin is sourced. Okay, so they're sourcing a cutin from somewhere, but palmic acid can be formed from a non-palm source. The production of palm oil from oil palms has a large environmental impact, including deforestation and habitat loss. So a non-palmic palm oil source is in here under their examples. Where they got their reagents from. This is all just APL. This is the APL patent. And if you really want to know so it seems they're using tomato pomace. Depolymerization of cutin in ethanol. That doesn't sound good. I mean, I'd actually have to look into this a lot more, but it looks like in this patent that they're doing an example from getting it from tomato cutin, C-U-T-I-N. Protective coatings formed over avocados. Protective coatings were formed by extracting compounds by methods described herein. Thermal depolymerization of cutin. So it's dipped in a solution. So now that solution's all over your avocado.
PUFA. It's a polyunsaturated fatty acid. That's a big problem in your body. Sunflower, if it was high oleic, yes. Organic, yes. But I don't know, and I doubt they're using the higher end high oleic to create this stuff. Maybe. Cottonseed, I would have a big problem with that. Coconut and palm, I wouldn't have as much a problem with. Okay. And then they're found in animal fats, which is what puts it in breast milk. But to put that on your disclaimer on the website, it has nothing to do with that. They are naturally occurring, right? But if they're from a toxic oil, which is occurring in so many different crackers, breads, grains, flours, all kinds of baked goods, and I have a huge problem with them because what we find is they live in your body for over 300 days when they get in there. And they make up your actual cells, which congest your cells. So nutrients then, because of these bad fats that are deformed, not like a saturated fat that's nice and fluffy and easy to enter, these bad fats clog it up. You can't get nutrients into the cells. You can't get toxins out. You become inflamed. And you actually speed up oxidation in your body. So it's just very interesting. Plus, the problem with this is that whatever protective layer they're putting over it, they actually show on their website where there is a regular decomposing avocado and then one that's covered with a peel, and it lasts 20 to 30 days longer. Well, if God wanted these to last 20 to 30 days longer, he would allow them to. So now I'm a bit skeptical of it.
So the point I was getting at is what good is this side of the pyramid if it's coated in some sort of monoglycerin cutin polymerized version of some oil? or as it says here, some cutting, whatever that means. I know I'm saying that word wrong, but if you know how to say the word, help me out. But yeah, no, that's a problem if what is going into producing these fruits and vegetables is toxic. So then we want to talk about meat. So I don't know if you guys know this, but there is definitely a problem with American meat. I was in a South American country recently, and their meat was so fresh and so tasty and so good. And I come back to the United States, and if you want decent meat in this country, I mean, just a single steak can cost you $18. And, you know, they are talking about affordability in this country, but it's not affordable. Who can afford food these days? Food is so stupid expensive. I mean, I can't go to the store with spending less than $40 on 7 things. And if I'm buying, you know, for the week, I'm spending $100 just to get what I have basic. So we got in the food pyramid a bunch of meat and cheeses, right? Milks and fish. Oh my God, salmon and parasites. That is not in the presentation today. It's not on my list, but it's a thing. Eggs. I mean, all this stuff is technically correct. But what happens when what is actually in the food and what is in the water that then waters that food, and what is that food covered with? You know, then the top half becomes just as poisonous as the bottom half. So is your prime steak held together by meat glue?
Tonight, an Action News investigation uncovers a little-known secret kept hidden in the kitchens of restaurants.
The prime steak that you think that you're getting.
It's not just in the kitchens in restaurants. It's all over the country. And it's the reason why a lot of your food is the way that it is. And, I mean, we can get into it more, but this meat glue thing is a problem.
Filet that you think you're getting may actually be pieces of stew meat that have been glued together. Investigative reporter Jim Parsons exposes how it's done and why it really poses a health risk for unsuspecting consumers, all of us. Jim.
Yeah, Wendy, several restaurant owners tell me that chefs right here in Western Pennsylvania are using this stuff, meat glue, in their kitchens. Now, critics say consumers are being tricked into thinking they're getting an expensive steak when, in reality, they're getting Frankensteak.
What I would normally use this stuff for would be for stews.
What started as this is now transformed into this.
It looks like a normal piece of steak.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Looks like a piece of filet mignon.
Yeah, it does.
Chef Doug Shirey is master of the kitchen at Mighty Oak Barrel in Oakmont.
What I would normally use this stuff for would be for stews.
What started as this is now transformed into this.
It looks like a normal piece of steak.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Looks like a piece of filet mignon.
Yeah.
This was 13
Chef Doug
years ago.
Shirey is master of the kitchen at Mighty Oak Barrel in Oakmont, a restaurant that does not use meat glue. But on this day, Doug shows us the secret of how it works.
And we're going to sprinkle it in generously, like so, until it's covered well.
Sprinkle some of this stuff on beef cuts that would otherwise have gone into the grinder.
I can already tell that the meat is, like, sticking together.
Wrap it up tightly, put it in the fridge, and 12 hours later, you've gone from stew meat to prime filet steaks, and you'll never know the difference. Not even an expert can tell. It's called transglutaminase enzyme, but most people just call it meat glue.
What is it exactly? What is meat glue?
Meat glue is, my understanding is that they're taking the clotting agents out of animals, pigs, and cows' blood, and they're using that essentially to clot together chunks of meat.
Nigel Tudor is a Washington County.
Yeah, but people who use it know that it's extremely dangerous and extremely toxic. That's why you can't just have it on your hands, because it will destroy your flesh.
A cattle rancher.
Just like a clot forms, whenever you get a cut, except instead of healing up a wound, it's taking pieces of meat, which are protein, and clotting them to each other into one giant chunk. So
Yummy.
Yummy, yeah, exactly.
So this has been sitting in there all night long, huh?
Yes, it has.
The day after sprinkling chunks of stew meat with meat glue, Doug now has one solid loaf that he slices into fillets. And even raw, it's difficult to tell this fillet has been glued together. and impossible to tell after it's been on the grill, even side by side with a real McCoy, a genuine filet mignon steak.
Look at that. It's amazing, huh?
And now it's time for the taste test. Doug and I sample the real steak, then the steak that's been glued together.
You can't taste the difference.
It tastes great.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Glued meat. Who would think glued meat would taste great?
Mighty Oak Barrel's owners say their supplier recently tried to sell them meat glue.
There's a deceptive quality that we don't like about it, and there's also a health and sanitation quality that we absolutely disagree with.
While the federal government says meat glue itself is generally recognized as safe, food safety experts have concerns.
There's a food safety problem. I think that would be the #1 concern.
The county health department's Steve Steingart demonstrates how glued meat turns scraps that have been handled and possibly contaminated into the inside of a fillet, and that is a problem.
The danger would be that this would be the outside, but now it's the inside because it's bound together. So this would have to be cooked, because if you ordered that rare, there's a possibility that this steak, there could be growth on it.
The problem is a consumer wouldn't necessarily know they've ordered a glued steak. Federal regulations required glued meat to be labeled as formed or reformed on packaging, but that does not apply to restaurants.
When it comes to meat glue, you don't think restaurants...
I've never seen that formed label on any of the meat that I've bought. So let's MEAT. Man, I've never seen a formed warning that this meat has been formed together. A meat glue label. Warning, eating meat contributes to climate change. Acrylide. I've never seen anything that has been labeled with formed, like he said, that was the law. The gross, this is Reader's Digest, this year, 2025. The gross meat ingredient you're probably eating. Can also be used in dairy. Transglutaminase. Transglutaminase. Imitation crab, chicken, sausage, nuggets, bread and cheese, pork tenderloins. So what good is it if you got all this meat over here on the left side and they're adding stuff like meat glue to it? Let alone all the vaccinations that go into cows and chickens. That's why food in other countries is so much better, because they don't use any of this stuff. But here's the material safety data sheet for transglutaminase, and this is from, I guess, guinea pig liver, this one, but this is the only MSDS sheet from a reputable source. This is Millport Sigma, and this is the powder substance. It is obviously the powder itself. You don't want to breathe in any powderous source of any kind, but respiratory sensation, it's a category 1 hazard. So, may cause allergy or asthma symptoms and breathing difficulties if inhaled. So that's the powder that he was showing that he was mixing in the thing. In case of skin contact, take off immediately all contaminated clothing, rinse skin and water and shower. Rinse with plenty of water. If swallowed, immediately make victim drink water, 2 glasses at most, and consult a physician. Section 2.2. I don't think there's a section 2.2. So it's not regulated as a dangerous good. Ozone depletion potential. Why? I don't know. So a lot of these MSDS sheets don't have, it says no data available for a lot of things, because is there any studies on the health risk? So potential health concerns with bacterial contamination. And as you can see when he was handling the meat, that bits that were supposed to be outside are now inside and inside are outside. So if you're just grilling it, the inside, and not just that, what if they're using this stuff on an industrial level and something like a meat processor for a big, I don't know, big fast food company is gluing a bunch of different meat together? You know, what if that meat that they're gluing together is rotten, and then they just run it through a chlorine bath, and next thing you know, you've got rotten meat that you're digesting, and all they did was kind of purge it with this unhealthy process, and then just gluing it all together. Research indicate that immunogenicity, MTG, can create new protein structures that may be recognized as foreign by the immune system, potentially exacerbating conditions like celiac disease and gluten sensitivity. Obviously, the white powder is super dangerous, but what good is this food pyramid if you got meat and cheeses and stuff, and some of that meat is being glued together? And chicken, oh my God, let's watch this about chicken. All right, there's more banned foods. Cisco system. Okay.
When was the last time you ate chicken? Well, the way many chickens are processed here in the U.S. is holding up a trade deal with Europe. What don't the Europeans like? The chlorine.
When it comes to chicken, Michelle Guidi prefers hormone-free, antibiotic-free, organically raised birds.
I'm feeding my children and my husband. This is my family, so I want to feed them the healthiest options out there.
But did she check chlorine-free?
No, I didn't.
Most U.S. poultry plants plunge freshly slaughtered birds into chilling baths.
You need to get that temperature down right away.
These baths often contain antimicrobial chemicals that can include chlorine.
Heavily diluted in water in order to kill pathogens that might be present, like salmonella.
A tiny amount gets absorbed into the meat.
Yes, I use bleach to clean my whites. My children swim in chlorine. But ingesting it and eating it, I feel a little bit apprehensive.
Government regulators say this use of chlorine is safe and effective in poultry processing.
Safe and
Studies
effective.
show once the chlorine hits the bird, it breaks down into safe byproducts. That's not what the European Union says. This French political ad shows American chickens bathing in swimming pool water, the fear that chlorine causes cancer. And while there's no evidence,
They operate on what's called the precautionary principle. Since there is controversy about using chlorine and other chemicals in poultry processing, they have decided to keep our poultry out.
for nearly 2 decades, costing U.S. poultry farmers hundreds of millions a year.
Unfortunately, this is a matter that political science has trumped sound science.
There is a different approach.
This is the best-selling chicken we've ever had.
At Antonelli's in San Francisco, consumers flock to buy Mary's air-chilled chickens. Mary Pittman and her son David raise their birds differently, from egg to chick to farm to slaughterhouse.
I can't eat a chicken that's dunked in chlorine bath, and that's what makes us very different.
At their plant in the Central Valley, the Pittmans blast freshly slaughtered birds with very cold air to lower their temperature. That's how it's done in Europe.
Where they're not in a water chill chlorine bath for an hour, we're instead air chilling with air for 3 hours.
A whole chilled chicken from Mary's costs about $2 more per pound. Even so, this mom might just consider it.
I would be willing to pay more money for it.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah, like RFK Jr. said, it's about the health benefits over time, and in the long run, you know, you don't want to pay the price with your health, and so that's not the only thing with our chicken. You know, if I really did a breakdown of all the food that they receive to eat, the injections that they get, how they live, in what sterile conditions they live in. I mean, chicken farms are disgusting. And then we want to put this up here in the top over here, like protein, dairies, healthy fats. Maybe chicken from another country, but not U.S. chicken. Maybe beef from another country, not U.S. beef. Cheese from another country. I mean, here's what Joe Rogan has to say about raw milk.
People who live on farms have been drinking raw milk since the beginning of time. It's normal and healthy. It tastes better. It's way easier for you to digest. But I've definitely bought it.
But I don't hear the French dying in droves either.
They seem to be healthy as fuck, and they're not as fat. People who live on farms.
Yeah, Europeans are a lot less fat and a lot more healthy because there is actually a plan to make Americans sick and unhealthy, obese, and it has to do with the ingredients in our food. And so, as great as this new food pyramid is, if it doesn't solve the issue underlying behind all the chemicals, additives, and preservatives, injections, all those things that go into our food supply, what good is this food pyramid? There's no good of it at all. Okay, great, you're educating the people, but you're not replacing the chemicals. Sure, they just get chemicals by eating something else. Look at this. It says water. How do you know that? How do you know that? Why do you need to be injected? And plus, and this is the last thing in tonight's show, what is in our water? So you're putting our water inside of the food, and then you eat the food. You grow up the beef, but the beef has been drinking poisoned water. Look at this. This is dumb. And this is about fluoride being all inside of our water. And fluoride causes so many problems. So many health problems come from fluoride. But that fluoride is entering in our fruits, our vegetables, our cows, our chickens, everything. It's entering into the entire food supply. And that entire pyramid has fluoride contamination. And I learned of a new disease that comes from fluoride. But what good is it?
Fluoride is still a poison and can harm your health.
This is one pollutant that we capture in the phosphate fertilizer industry. And having captured it, we can't dump it into the sea, but we put it into our own drinking water. It's extraordinary.
Fluoride in our water supply is a very real and ever-present risk to our population at large.
A radical view that's made Adelaide dentist Dr. Andrew Harms a renegade among his colleagues and the professional body he once headed in South Australia.
The ADA and other dental professional groups will not speak to anybody from the anti-fluoridation side, but I've been asked to not refer to myself as a past president of the Dental Association of South Australia. In fact, I'm no longer a member of the Dental Association over this issue.
Dr. Harms has joined the growing movement of public discontent about adding fluoride, a potent poison in its most concentrated form, to our drinking water.
The chemical fluoride itself is dangerous, but also I'm concerned about the arsenic levels and the lead levels as a result of these chemicals being dumped in the water supply.
Alarm bells.
Yeah, because you're not just getting dental grade fluoride. I don't know why people think, oh, it's good for our teeth, we're going to add fluoride to our water. This has been happening before I was born. This was not something that we voted on. This is not something that we came into agreement and said, we want to have nice teeth, so we're going to add fluoride to our water. Well, the thing is, are you even adding fluoride, or are you adding contaminated hydrofluorosalicylic acid? That's a good question you should probably ask yourself, because dental grade fluoride is very expensive, but cheap fertilizer waste it's easy. You can get a bunch of it and add that to the water. That's what's being added to the water. It's waste from fertilizer production. It is not dental grade fluoride. And because what? Then we water our fields. Then we give water to our cows and to our chickens and to our animals and our livestock. So all of our fruits and vegetables, everything on this pyramid is contaminated with fluoride, unless we get it from some other country. If it's made in this country, everything here, maybe outside of the oil, but if it was made from trees that are watered with American oil or watered with American water, that oil is going to have residue of fluoride in it. The entire pyramid is contaminated with fluoride. And fluoride has a horrible effect on IQ and a bunch of other things. I mean, I've been against, and this is the microbiome of your gut.
So we fluoridate most of the drinking water here, but in Europe it's 3%, and in Canada it's only a third of the drinking water. If fluoride is killing bacteria, which we know it does, in the mouth, reducing cavities, what is it doing to the bacteria in the microbiome? Mm-hmm. It may be doing damage and altering the microbiome. And a recent study in one of the JAMA journals found that the fluoride may be accumulating in one of the learning centers of the brain, which is why they saw lower IQs among children in fluoridated areas where the water had fluoride added.
So what about toothpaste?
So it's the current recommendation to avoid fluoride in toothpaste for young children. That's probably for a good reason. Maybe the kids should not be drinking sugary drinks and these juices with added sugar. maybe there's another way, instead of adding a bactericidal agent to the drinking water, that we can address the cavity issue.
So they say that fluorine in your water makes for healthy teeth, but there is something called fluorosis. Now, they're saying that the levels of fluoride in the water is too low to cause this problem, fluorosis. However, you don't just get, like he said, you're not just getting fluoride from your water. It's in your toothpaste. It's now in all your fruits and vegetables. It's in your meat, dairy, and poultry. Your beef, dairy, and poultry. It's in everything. Fluoride has contaminated the entire food supply. And I know for a fact I see a lot of people with this problem. I myself, just a personal testimony, I myself had horrible rotting teeth. And I got off the fluorinated water. I replaced my water. I do not drink or use tap water for cooking. I buy water for cooking, drinking, putting the filter onto the shower head. I use non-fluorinated toothpaste, and when I started doing that, my teeth stopped rotting. My personal teeth stopped rotting. And in fact, for the last 10 years, I have not had an issue with an increase in issues with my teeth. But this is what my teeth used to look like. And I'm using mainstream toothpaste, multi-billion-dollar business. They don't care about you, man. I mean, I'm believing in this administration to at least talk about some truth, but companies and systems, they will profiteer off your suffering. This is why we fight like heaven, man. You got to get the information so that you can stop buying the crap they're using to kill you. For real. There's so much garbage. You can love the pyramid. New pyramid, old pyramid's out, new pyramid's in. Great. Old pyramid of Satan out. Satan's pyramid out. We got another pyramid now. Very little grains. Lots of proteins to eat. Sure, no doubt. That's a Mediterranean diet if I've ever seen one, right here. Lot less bread. It's good for you. But the problem is the American products are the problem. It's what we make in this country that is the problem. It's behind in the multiple layers of chemicals, preservatives, additives, vaccinations, and the fluorination of our water that makes our foods poisonous. It causes inflammation in the body. We read all the list of side effects that occur from all these different additives. Why do we have an increase in cancer? Everybody wants to end cancer, but nobody wants to redesign how we handle food and what safety measures we put in this country, what chemicals are allowed in our food. And if you want to buy truly organic, truly natural, and truly healthy food, you're going to pay as much as it's going to the doctor. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's going to be expensive. So, food pyramid's great, but the whole issue is everything behind it. Go eat in Italy. Go eat in France. Go eat in Africa. Go eat, I don't know about India, but Japan. Go to any country in South America and eat their food, and you will immediately realize that their food is healthy. I mean, I was in South America and I was eating the food. It was like my body had been crying out for this for years. And I eat fruits and vegetables. I eat like what this pyramid says. Most of it is meat, some vegetables, but that's pretty much it. Most of it's meat. I mostly eat meat, and I was eating the food and I was like, this is the best food I've had in a long, long time. Why? Because there's fluorination of our water. It has a much more massive impact in the entire food chain than the vaccination of the animals, then the preservatives, then there's the additives, and then there's the meat glue. So you think you're buying a steak? I could show you video after video after video of people taking their steak and running it underwater, even yourself, and it starts coming apart. So you're eating this substance. Just so you learned something today, transglutaminase. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. You can't find any research studies on it. Nobody wants you to find out that this is in your food supply and that you're eating it and what are the health benefits of it. They don't want you to know. They want that as hidden as possible. You have the plastic covering of A-peel. You have potassium bromate. You have all these different things that are in the food supply. So as good as the pyramid might be, in theory, in reality, we have a lot of work to do to clean our food supply in this country and get it to just what other countries are already doing. I mean, I was in South America, somebody I was with was like, is the beef grass-fed, grass-finished? Because here you have to, it's not just that it's grass-fed, it has to also be grass-finished. And they were like, cows eat grass. What else would they eat? They would eat grass, you silly American. And we don't even know the quality of grain. And plus, we're given just corn. Most of our livestock lives on just massive amounts of this corn. Like it's good for them? No, not at all. It makes them fat and it ruins who knows how many chemicals and pesticides and fertilizers went into making that corn. Okay, we're eating beef, but the beef is contaminated with pesticides, fertilizers, vaccines, fluoride. But we're eating the beef, and we wonder why people are obese. Their body is literally having a reaction to the food that we have access to. And the guy who created the whole system that we use for nutrition in this country wants to point the finger at people, but people don't really have a choice. They don't have choice. The only choice we have is what is offered to us at the grocery store. And you can only vote so much with your dollar in terms of what's available. And a lot of people don't have a lot of dollars to vote with. They don't have a lot of dollars to make decisions with. How are they going to... I see these food influencers and they're like, make sure to get beef marrow from a farm. Yeah, that stuff is more expensive than gold. Maybe you can buy it on your influencing money, but the rest of us have to get whatever we can at the grocery store. It's ridiculous. Trying to get truly healthy food... this country is in a very limited supply. Because I had a garden, but I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, I'm watering these plants with water that I know is contaminated with fluorine. I know it's contaminated. So now fluorine is now getting into my plants, and when I eat those plants, I guess they're going to be a little bit better. They've never been sprayed with pesticides. But I know the water inside those plants is fluorinated. I don't know what levels it's concentrating in, which I know that chemical is a neurotoxin and it reduces people's IQ, and there's nothing I can do about it unless I get a filter to remove it, or I go buy water from the water store and water my plants that way. So it's great the moves that are happening, but the moves that need to be happening is the banning of all of these chemicals. High fructose corn syrup should have been banned a long time ago. I don't know what's the deal here. Like, why do they still allow that was in the early 2000s. I remember there's a big push against high fructose corn syrup, that it's dangerous. But it's in all sodas, it's in Coca-Cola, it's in cereals, it's in yogurts, it's in candies, it's in baked goods, it's in chips, it's in everything. Okay, we're going to teach the people with the new food pyramid not to eat this stuff. That would be all the way at the bottom, the smallest thing people will eat. But people like candies. They like bread. They like fast food. They like junk. If it wasn't popular, there wouldn't be so many McDonald's. There wouldn't be so many Burger Kings. But also, there's a price point. Getting fresh meat, good, healthy meat. You go to the farmer's market, how much does a fresh chicken going to cost you from a farm that's not vaccinated, not chlorinated? $25. That's how much it costs for a chicken at the farmer's market. And it's always like a super special thing when we get a farmer's market chicken. That's the reality of how much this stuff costs. A steak. You want a steak from a butcher? That's $20. And that's not going to be a steak this size on this picture. That's a nice size steak. Things are expensive. Healthy things are super expensive in this country. And the cheese is all the cheese is made from pasteurized milk in this country. Raw milk cheese, fantastic. It's some of the best stuff. It's so tasty. But if you want to go buy raw milk cheese, you know, it's $10 for a small block, you know, 40 minutes away from here. A gallon of raw milk is $15 versus a gallon of pasteurized milk at the grocery store, which is $4.50. So I wish people could access healthy food. It seems third world countries and other countries can figure it out. I do believe, and maybe I'll do an episode on the cost difference, how much more expensive it is for companies to pesticide and additive and corrupt our food supply. It's almost like there's an investment to destroying our food in this country, because it's way more. If third world countries don't do it because it's so much cheaper just to let it go wild, and they have meat on all their tables, they got bread in all their stores, they're able to manufacture more than enough food for their entire population in completely natural methodologies, because that's the cheapest way to do it. I mean, it is. Some crops will fail, some crops won't. The government can subsidize all kinds of fraud, but you can't subsidize farmers when they have a bad year or have multiple bad years, or the market doesn't fit the actual price of their goods. There's a whole history of the government subsidizing farmers when, okay, we want you to grow this. I know it doesn't make as much money, but we're gonna fill the gap for you, so you can grow this stuff for us. Why not? You know, because there's a big conspiracy. That's why not. I mean, they want chemicals, they want diseases, they want cancers, they want every calamity to come upon the American person. So what? We can't fight. We can't defend ourselves. We can't think. We can't stand up, because we have a constitution in this country, and that's why we are enemy number one. Everybody can come here. If they do it legally, they can come here and they can enjoy the right to free speech, the right to bear arms, the right to privacy, theoretically. You know, that's what makes America great, that we have rights. So guess what? The powers that be don't want the human race to have rights. They want the human race to be slaves and to be under the thumb forever, you know, but that's not going to happen. So it's good. The new food pyramid, it's actually correct, but there's a bigger problem behind it. Watch the show. Look at all the chemical breakdowns. The reason I'm looking at these chemicals, I personally have a degree in chemistry, so I'm able to look at the MSDS sheets, and I'm able to look at the patents. It's a little complicated, the APL patent, but maybe I'll look more into it if you want me to. But all right, guys, don't fight like hell. Fight like